Welcome to ThinkTech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm Jay Fidell.
And I'm Richard Melendez.
In our show this time, we'll attend a public lecture by a nationally known computer scientist, Lance Fortnow of Georgia Tech.
He was the closing keynote of the Computability, Complexity, and Randomness Conference. He spoke about bounding rationality with computation.
The keynote was presented at the Physical Sciences Building at UH Manoa as the last event of the conference, which had been going on all last week on the Manoa campus.
This was high science at the intersection of computer science and higher mathematics, although the discussion sounded more like math than computer programming.
Lance's work includes game theory and optimal strategies and predictions. It focuses on how math can solve problems more efficiently and how to obscure information you want to hide.
Lance is an award-winning professor and chair of the School of Computer Science at the Georgia Tech College of Computing. He's a leading researcher in computational complexity. He wrote The Golden Ticket, P, NP, and the Search for the Impossible, and the P versus NP problem.
His work in economics includes game theory, optimal strategies, and prediction. The 2008 financial crisis highlighted the acute problem of bounded rationality.
Financial securities, such as credit default obligations, were packaged in a way as to make it very difficult for computers, and even more so humans, to evaluate their fair price and risk.
Lance is the author of The Golden Ticket, a popular science book on P versus NP, where he talks about solving problems quickly by computers, but where the answer cannot necessarily be checked quickly by computers.
This is called the P versus NP question, and is considered the most important open problem in mathematics. Many computer scientists are still working on it.
A certain kind of affirmative answer to the problem may have great impact on computer security, breaking most existing cryptology systems.
The International Conference on Computability, Complexity, and Randomness meets annually around the world. This was its 11th meeting. They like to come to Hawaii, and they raise the bar at Manoa by giving us the opportunity to attend and participate in conferences like this.
The conference draws computer scientists and mathematicians from all over the world, including New Zealand, India, the UK, Chile, France, Israel, Germany, Singapore, and Japan, as well as a number of schools on the mainland.
The conference was sponsored by the National Science Foundation, the Association for Symbolic Logic, the Association for Women in Mathematics, and the Math Department of the College of Natural Sciences at UH Manoa.
The chair of the conference was Rodney Downey from Victoria University in New Zealand. ThinkTech's Nicole Hori talked with him before the keynote.
My name is Rodney Downey. I'm from Victoria University in Wellington, New Zealand. That's in the mathematics department. I'm co-chair of this particular conference series, of this particular conference with someone called Dennis Hirschfeld from the University of Chicago that couldn't be here.
I just wanted to hear what you thought of the presenters and the discussion that's been happening so far.
This conference series started, this is the 11th in the series, and it started long ago in Argentina. And it's been all around the world, and it's now developed, so it was at the kind of the beginning of the subject, and now it's developed into a really flowering subject with lots and lots of young people, as you can see. And the talks this week have been awesome. There have been all kinds of different areas, from mathematical economics to what's called algorithmic randomness, which is the mathematics of trying to understand what a random coin tosses would mean and things like that. So if you toss coins, you'd expect them to have certain properties, otherwise you'd want your money back from the casino. And there's a deep mathematics behind that, and it's used all the time in things like banking and cryptography and all kinds of things. And this is what we're doing here. It's in the interface between mathematics and computer science, and we've had a great week in wonderful weather and a great, beautiful university.
Can you tell us a little bit about your research personally?
My research has always been in and about what the mathematics of computation. I got my PhD in '82, and ever since there, all those years, I've worked on trying to understand the complexity, how long do things take to compute, and whether things can be computed at all. And this is an area that's always fascinated me, and originally was part of something called mathematical logic, and its roots really go back to Gödel and Alan Turing, who famous British mathematician. That terrible movie, The Imitation Game, was done about, unless you happen to support Cumberbatch. My wife thought it was a fun movie, but the mathematicians in the crowd were hostile to it.
Applications you've talked about, do you think that the field is advancing quickly? Have you been able to see any changes since that first conference?
There's been massive changes. I mean, most of the things we talked about are still in the background, but it's developed into all kinds of things, particularly facing what we call applications, which is areas like what's called ergodic theory, where you study the long-term behaviour of iterative systems. What can you predict in the future? And things like that. I mean, markets are examples of that. So that's kind of where the area has been developing, particularly by the young people.
And then if you're able to find the right computational approach, what kind of difference does that make in terms of the speed at which you can solve a problem?
There are lots of problems, you know, that we know that we can do quickly using, if we have some source of randomness. For example, finding prime numbers, which is something which people probably know what that means. Prime numbers are anything divisible by itself and 1. We do know algorithms for finding it which are exact, but really there are these randomized algorithms which do them extremely quickly, and they're really the only ones used in practice. And there are lots of examples like that we do. So it's a very important area of research. And by the same token, there are things we don't want to be done quickly, such as cryptography, which is given a number, can you split it into, can you find its factors? Because if you do, all modern banking would collapse, which would be kind of bad. So we'd like to prove that you can't do that, but we have no idea how to do that. So Lance Fortnow here wrote a book all about this, popularising it. What's it called, the Golden Ticket or something? They're called the Golden Ticket. So if you want more, then you should. He'll probably have a cheap copy with him.
Can you tell us what you expect from Lance's speech today and why it's the keynote of the conference?
Well, I've known Lance for a long time, and he always gives extremely entertaining talks. We invited him to give a tutorial series on the mathematics of finance and games that we use in finance and things like that, Prisoner's Dilemma and all kinds of things which occur in mathematical economics, I guess you'd say. And this is an area we don't really know much about, but one of the themes of this conference series is that the program committee constantly seeks areas outside of the conference to bring in. And this is something we don't know about, and we hope to learn about it this week, and indeed we did. And this will be, hopefully in lay terms, a presentation of that kind of stuff.
So you've been here a few days already. What have you learned personally in attending this conference?
One of the things about conferences which makes them so good, makes them much better than just reading papers and looking online and things, is that you get to talk to people, and I've discovered at least 4 problems that I'd like to work on after I leave. And I'm hoping to work with the people I've met here, and I've also met people I've never met before, so that's a nice thing. And it's nice to come to a place where you meet new people, you discover new ideas, and I think that's the whole point of these things. And not only that, we keep them fairly cheap.
Do you know where this conference will be held next time?
The next time the conference is in Mysore, which is in India. There's a beautiful conference centre in the Indian Institute of Technology, and we're going to be going to Mysore. So this has been held all around the world: South Africa, Hawaii, Argentina, the Midwest, which good conference, but the weather wasn't so good. Nanjing, Singapore, New Zealand. It's been all around the world, so it's one of these things that we try to do.
We also talked to Quinn Culver from Fordham University in New York. He had been a student in UH, and he was delighted to be back again.
I'm here with Quinn, who came here to UH for his undergraduate degree in mathematics, and now he's back for the conference in computing and
complexity and randomness.
Yes.
That's right, yeah.
So what have you enjoyed during this week of lectures?
Well, I heard some very interesting, simple questions. I like the questions that are simple to state but very difficult to solve, and there was a lot of those. I like those.
The community who's interested in computing, complexity, and randomness, is it a small community, or are these a lot of people you have known and met before?
Most of them I know, I guess. Yeah, probably about 80%. And I probably should know more if I were the other 80% probably know 95% of each other.
What sort of research are you working on now, and do you think that any of the connections you've made or the people you've met here, the lectures you've heard, would help you there?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm doing randomness, the computability and randomness, and yeah, that's the point of these meetings, is to make connections and bounce ideas off your peers, other experts who know things. You know, sometimes something seems very hard and someone else has the right point of view. It makes it actually very simple.
What kinds of computing tools are commonly used?
Oracles. It's all about the oracle.
Lance Fortnow's keynote was provocative and entertaining. His premise was that with the benefit of computational tools and math, you can solve any problem and bring order and predictability even to randomness.
Using data, algorithms, and math, he said we can predict economics and political process, public opinion, and elections, and for that matter, human conduct and global events.
Here's an abstract of what he said. Traditional microeconomic theory treats individuals and institutions as completely understanding the consequences of their decisions given the information they have available.
These assumptions might require these agents to solve hard computational problems to optimize our choices. What happens if we restrict the computational power of economic agents?
There has been some work in economics treating computation as a fixed cost or simply considering the size of a program. This series of talks, based on the work of Fortnow and others, will explore a new direction, bringing the rich tools of computability and computational complexity into economic models.
Fortnow shows us how to incorporate computability and computational complexity into a number of economic models, including game theory, prediction markets, forecast testing, and preference revelation and awareness. And Fortnow then suggests a number of further directions worth exploring.
It's not that this subject was easy to understand, but Lance Fortnow covered it well and with style, grace, and stories, and he made it at least somewhat accessible to the ordinary listener, even us. Here are some clips of his remarks.
So there's this area of microeconomics called preference revelation. The idea is that you can't internally understand someone's values, but you can look at their actions and then try to infer what those values are. And so what supermarket wants to do is try to find, people's values of products, assuming that the customers actually make their optimal choices. When I look at you, I see the choices you make, I know you're trying to optimize, and then I can kind of try to undo that. So let's go back to the, but the problem is, go back to the consumer's point of view. The consumer, wants to, maximize their total value. They want to follow this cart of goods whose total price is less than the budget, but maximizes the total value of their goods. So does anybody recognize this problem? I mean, if you're into complexity, this is something that's known as the knapsack problem. It's the same problem of you have a knapsack and you try to put as much stuff as you can get in a knapsack, which has to maximize the value of the stuff you can fit in a knapsack. Mathematically, it's the same problem. What's the problem with the knapsack problem? It's NP complete. Now, I know a lot of you might not be familiar with the P versus NP question, but just think of the NP complete as basically saying it's very hard to compute. We don't know an algorithm, and most of us don't believe there is an algorithm that'll actually find the optimal value to do the ultimate shopping in the store that you go to. So we should all starve. No, I mean, what happens is, that's the interesting thing about NP-complete problems, is these people still shop. They still go to the supermarket. They still actually buy things in the supermarket. But so how do they shop if they can't actually compute what they're trying to do? And what they do is they do something, they'll just do it heuristically. They'll figure out what they really need. They'll buy things that they really want to buy. They'll approximate mathematically. So, they won't be able to do the optimal choice, but they can get something pretty close, and there's various ways to do it. One is what we call a greedy approach, where you pick the next item that maximizes the ratio of the value to the cost. And then there's actually even better optimization techniques that are out there if you really want to do this right. But most shoppers do some sort of approximation to the correct answer. But the problem is, from the supermarket's point of view, is there's actually a well-designed economic theory easy to compute if everyone made their optimal choices. But the problem is, people aren't making optimal choices. How do you still do the preference revelation? And that was kind of a neat question that kind of this is work I did with Michele Budinic, who was a student from Italy, and Rakesh Vohra. Rakesh Vohra, we were together at Northwestern University. He was in business schools, and he's an economist, and I was in computer science, and we've collaborated on lots of different things. But the idea was just that, the basic idea is this. We watch what a shopper does every week. You make this assumption, which is not necessarily a good assumption, that they have the same preferences every week. People have the same rough preferences. And then we want to find valuations that somehow capture those preferences, even if people aren't optimizing properly, and we find ways to sort of roughly do that. So that's kind of the emphasis of my paper is the kinds of question I want to look at is how do we deal with these kinds of economic results that are out there when computation gets in the way, when it's really hard to compute things. And this has just been kind of a common theme that's been, that kind of permeates me through this line of research that I've been doing recently. So the point is that mostly economic theory really assumes that the people who are involved in the theory can find the optimal solution, can make the optimal choices given the information that they have. But computationally, that can often be a difficult thing. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's very easy to make those choices. But often it's a very computationally difficult thing to do. And what I want to do is, and the way that economists have approached that is usually with some very simple models of computing. But I really want to bring in sort of the power of computational complexity. This is my bread and butter research area. To use that to understand how people interact, what kind of strategies they use, what kind of equilibrium behavior that arises out of this. This is just a picture of what we call complexity classes, different kinds of things that measure how hard a problem is. Okay.
In a week's time, they all had gotten to know each other and exchange ideas with each other and become friends. This is what makes science so much fun. It makes you want to be a computer scientist or a mathematician, doesn't it?
It was a beautiful sunshiny day at Manoa. The campus never looked so good. So at the end of the conference, the attendees took a group photo on the steps in front of Hamilton Library.
And here are some closing comments by Conference Chair Rod Downey and our own Nicole Hori.
The last talk was excellent. It was informative and probably slightly technical, but I learned a lot anyway, so I got a couple of ideas towards things I might like to look at. The whole idea that computation's everywhere and there are issues when we think we understand things, we realize that because of bounded rationality, we don't really understand things. I think that's a really important concept. Whenever you look around, you have to understand that there's computation everywhere. For example, my son, he's doing a PhD at Carnegie Mellon in machine learning. They're using computation all the time to try and model human behavior. For example, they're modeling the behavior of customers in stores just to try and figure out, well, how to make them buy more, I guess. But it's probably something to also worry about a bit too, I guess.
Is there an ethical issue there?
Oh, I would think so. I do. I do. I think that when people using Facebook discovered that people were doing rat-like experiments on them, they weren't very happy. I think that's, were you happy? It's so hopefully humans will also fight back.
There was a wonderful feeling in the room, a great keynote from Professor Fortnow, and I enjoyed listening to it myself. I had no idea there were so many different ways that mathematics and economics come together. Certainly, it was interesting to hear how randomness can be useful not only for obfuscating or for finding challenging problems, but also for creating a better product. And I enjoyed listening to all the different real-life examples. Very simple, very straightforward, but involving a lot of computation. And the crowd was wonderful. You can tell that there's a lot of different people here. It seemed like there are a lot of people who are in mathematics, but from all over the world. We're fortunate that it's so easy to come down to UH and just pop in on a public talk like this. It's really accessible to everyone here in Honolulu. And it's nice to see that UH is drawing people in for these international conferences, which hopefully will be something we can take advantage of more in the future. It was exciting to hear that we had international experts here. And I think it's always interesting to see what's currently possible with computing and where that is going. Because as things get easier, problems that previously seemed very challenging are suddenly going to become tractable. And then once we're able to solve new things, it just opens up new technologies, opens up new possibilities. Some of these are things, of course, that the big companies are going to be mostly using, but some of them might actually be useful for individuals as well. So it'll be interesting to see how these techniques can help us make better choices and just operate smarter.
Hawaii is an attractive venue for conferences like this and can draw great minds from all over the world. The possibilities are tremendous. Let's take advantage of our finest attributes for the benefit of science.
Yes, let's make Hawaii the education capital of the Pacific.
So take science, take math, go to school, get connected, find your niche, have fun, change the world. It's all right here in Manoa. And now let's take a look at our ThinkTech calendar of events going forward.
ThinkTech broadcasts its talk shows live on the internet from noon to 5 p.m. on weekday afternoons, and then we broadcast our earliest shows all night long. If you missed a show or you want to replay or share any show, they're all archived on demand on YouTube.
Visit thinktechhawaii.com for our weekly calendar and our live stream and YouTube links, or better yet, sign on to our email list and get the daily docket of our upcoming shows.
ThinkTech has a great new green screen studio at Pioneer Plaza. We invite you to come down, see our studio, be part of our live audience. Contact me, Jay, at thinktechhawaii.com. Be a part of our civic engagement on ThinkTech.
So go ahead, give us a thumbs up on YouTube, or send us a tweet at ThinkTechHI. We want to know what you're thinking and how you feel about current issues and events affecting Hawaii. We want you to stay in touch with us, and we want to stay in touch with you. Let's think together.
Yes, and on Thursday, January 21st, ThinkTech will join with the Anthology Marketing Group to present a program called Jobs for Hawaii, Working for a Better Future, at the Anthology Theater in Bishop Square.
The program will cover the state of jobs and meaningful careers for the youth of our state, whether the job market is adequate for our workforce and sufficient for the economy we'd like to have, and what our governor, legislature, and private sector can do to provide better jobs and careers to keep our young people here.
Join us and raise your awareness about the critical changes affecting and taking place in Hawaii. Be a part of the conversation and sign up to attend on thinktechhawaii.com.
We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of ThinkTech, but first, we want to thank our underwriters.
Okay, Richard, that wraps up this week's edition of ThinkTech. Remember, you can watch ThinkTech on OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like Richard does. For additional times, check out OC16.tv.
For lots more ThinkTech videos and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on ThinkTech and OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be a guest or a volunteer, a producer or an intern, and help us reach and have an impact on Hawaii.
Thanks so much for being part of our ThinkTech family and for supporting our open discussion of tech, energy, diversification, and globalism in Hawaii. You can watch this show throughout the week and tune in next Sunday evening for our next important weekly episode. I'm Jay Fidell.
And I'm Richard Melendez. Aloha, everyone.